Welcome everybody to the very first football video on this channel. It's a brand new year, the 1st of January, and look who is sitting next to me. Of course, I am here with the boys in Clubhouse 5. Thank you guys so much to them for giving us their residency. We owe them a lot.
Like Celine Dion in like Vegas.
That's for sure. Let's go to you, Patrick, first. 2024 now.
Yeah.
New year,
Big
new
time.
you. The guys
Not
at
really.
home wouldn't have seen you for a long time. How you doing?
I'm fine. I'm 35 this year. I will have a second child this year. It's not a new me. It's a very old me. It's a deeply old me. But it's nice to be here with you guys, you know, and to be here optionally.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't want to imply anything, but yeah, it's nice. It's
Mate,
nice.
It's a pleasure to be here back with you. Someone else that's back. When was the last time you were on a video of Ciaran and Pat?
Probably like Stat Wars or something.
Yeah, it must have been a Stat Wars, and even then, like, probably not in the same room, just via hologram.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Reluctantly.
Yeah, literally reluctantly. Well, look, at home, because it is the 1st of January, the transfer window is now open, we thought we'd have a little discussion about the signings that you guys at home, your club, need to make to help you for the rest of this season. There's only one signing you can make. So the way it's going to work, very similar to what you may have seen before on other things that we've been on. Me and Pat are going to suggest a player to join a club, and Ciaran will have the deciding vote over who that player is. It's as very simple as that. And then afterwards, we might have a little Q&A, a little question about how things have been over the last month, 2 months or so, since we departed the holy Football Daily, or the last 3 years since Ciaran departed, because he's done a lot. Okay, then, we should kick off things with Arsenal. Before we get into the transfers, Pat, Arsenal top of the league at the time of recording. How are you feeling?
Pretty good. It's also interesting because Arsenal's numbers, like their stats, are currently firmly the best in the league, and the margin between them and City, who have the second best stats in the league, is larger than the margin between City and Liverpool in third. But I mean, even last year, you know, Arsenal were running super hot first half of the season. Not only as in they were getting a bit lucky in the way their performances were turning into points, which you have to if you're going to get 50 points, but also everybody was kind of playing at their like total limit. But even during that time, City were as good as Arsenal. Like, everyone was saying, oh, City, they're not really at the races, and were they better off without Haaland? They got 45 points in the first half of the season. Like, they were on a 90-point pace when they were crap. Whereas this year, you look at the league, and I think Liverpool are probably closer to their upper level than Arsenal and City are. But basically, there are 3 challengers for the title. There's no one candidate that is just like the standout one, which has always been the case. Like, City have just always been better than everybody else, and you hope you can build up enough of a lead to like pull away from them. So I feel positive, and I also think in the Champions League, I think Arsenal and City are the 2 best teams in the Champions League this year as well. So I'm not saying I'm gonna win one of those, but I wanted to like support a team playing good football. I wanted a team that played a distinctive style. I wanted to compete. I got all that stuff. So I'm very happy. I just want the season to be over. It's very stressful. How do you deal with this every year? You obviously don't have to worry.
Not at the moment,
Yeah.
sadly, not at the moment.
Carabao?
Oh,
Europa?
I will
Enjoy
happily take a Carabao
Enjoy
Cup
that.
win.
You
Happily.
go out of that, then you might as well stop watching.
Dissolve
every
as a club.
season, it's quite easy, actually. You get used to it, but it is quite stressful. But it's also like, I now understand when you look at people who support Bayern, and you're like, they must get bored.
It's really boring.
No, I really just I would like to win it for 20 years in a row. Because ultimately I watch football because I want the stupid team that my dad picked for me to win.
I get that.
And it really doesn't matter about anything else. So it's like when people are like, oh, people don't care if City win it or whatever. Like, oh, it doesn't really affect me. I'm like, I don't care that you don't care. That's sort of how it works, isn't it? So no, it's nice. You can always be better.
Well, also, I think you could win 37 games of the season and you've won the title, and then the last game of the season, you like field a bunch of kids and you lose to like Bournemouth or like, some crap club like Man United, and like everyone's still going to laugh at you, even though you're like the best team in the world and like essentially invincible.
Well, football nowadays,
you still get laughed at, so you can never really relax.
Football nowadays, it seems more like rather than people wanting their teams to win, they want their rivals to lose so they can put a tweet out. Like constantly.
I will never get over Man United being crap.
Oh,
I will never stop enjoying it.
Feed off that.
The amount of
it's like the invincibility star from Super Mario.
It
makes me like
Chelsea.
like that's how I feel when it happens. Like,
okay, all right. Well, let's get in then to our first transfer for Arsenal. I've gone for a player that Arsenal have actually already faced in the Champions League. Plays for PSV, Johan Bakayoko. Do you wonder whether he was named after Johan Cruyff? Which is obviously interesting.
I mean, it is just a
He's
Dutch
Belgian
name.
though, which makes sense, but obviously plays in the Eredivisie. Anyway, look,
Basically
right
the same,
wing,
isn't it, Zach?
well,
It's all the same.
Not a million miles away. Basically, obviously, they have Bukayo Saka, maybe one of the best wingers in the world, having a fantastic season. But he is playing so many games. And whilst there are a lot of players in kind of the other positions, you've got Eddie Nketiah to be back up as a striker. You've got Martinelli and Trossard for the left wing, even Kai Havertz, we've seen kind of play across that front line whilst also playing in central midfield. When he gets to the right wing, it just feels like Saka doesn't really ever get a break.
Nope.
And because Arsenal want to go far in every single competition, he's playing in every game, and he's so vital to the way they play that he just doesn't get a break. And there are arguments for maybe possible. Someone I saw kind of mentioning that right back could be a position for Arsenal to look into to strengthen. Obviously, Ben White's, I think, fantastic there when he's fit. Tommy Asu does a really good job.
Tommy Asu is really good when he's fit. He's just never fit.
But I think right wing, backup right wing. Arguments that people wanted a striker as well.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of it's so weird. Arsenal fans. I mean, you to be fair, City fans might have had it as well when Gabby Jesus was at City. I think Gabby Jesus is a fantastic striker, especially in the Premier League. Like, he's one of the best in there. However, it feels like unless Arsenal have the best striker in the world, Erling Haaland or Harry Kane, they're never going to be quite happy with that position. That's for a debate, I guess, for another time. But yes, Johan Bakayoko, a guy who was possibly going to be moving to Brentford in the summer, rejected that because he basically felt like he'd rather stay at PSV than move to Brentford, which is an interesting choice. Obviously, PSV done so well in the Eredivisie, and they're doing really, really well again this season. He's only 20 years old. At the time, I think it was about £38.5 million that PSV wanted. Now that it's January, and now that obviously they know Arsenal's coming in, a club that have the money to spend.
And they're in the knockouts of the Champions League.
And they're in the knockouts of the Champions League, one of their key assets. That's probably looking at 50 to 60 at least.
Bruh,
at least.
This is steep stuff.
It is steep stuff.
Do Arsenal have that much to spend?
Arsenal have a lot of money. Arsenal do have a lot of money. Yeah,
I don't know if we have that. Yeah, I don't know if we have that to spend in January, honestly. I think we may be able to spend in the next financial year.
I mean, last year you wanted to spend nearly 100 million on Mudryk. Like,
but that was a different financial year, and then we bought Rice.
Very cheap.
And Havertz. We spent a lot of money on Havertz.
A lot of money in the summer.
And we've already committed money to Raya, probably. We don't,
Yeah, 20,
not technically, but probably.
Odds. Yeah, 20 odd or so. So yeah, look, he's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Dortmund are also after him as well.
Ooh.
But he's really exciting. He's super, super young.
Yeah, he's good.
And someone that I think, can just help with kind of Saka's time whilst also not kind of downgrading in that position. But that's my one.
I agree that a Saka backup is someone you want. I think it's just a really hard position to recruit for. And to be honest with you, like, yes, he plays a lot of minutes, but if you want to win things, your best players have to play basically all the minutes. Like, that's kind of how it is.
Like Rodri.
Like, you just need those guys. Like Rice needs to play basically all the time.
Yeah.
That's how it is. However, I've gone for a midfielder because Arsenal's midfield is the one area of the field that is kind of old. So right now, obviously, it's kind of Rice, Odegaard, and Havertz as the three midfielders. But Jorginho's contract is up next summer. Partey might be transferring to, let's say, he might be wearing a different uniform, let's say, next year. In my view, he should be. But so I do think Arsenal need another midfielder. And I do think as good as Havertz has been recently, Havertz is not going to be a game-controlling midfielder. I do think you would like another guy in there who's more of a settled possession type, who can get into the final third and be somewhat useful, but is not like a make off-the-ball runs into the box. You want somebody who can put his foot on the ball and dictate a game a little bit more.
Emile Smith-Rowe. When he's fit.
I just don't think he does that either, man. He's quite a high usage player. So the rumours going around at the moment are that Arsenal are interested in Curtis Jones from Liverpool. Ooh. And I really like that move. I don't know how much he would cost in January because he's got a contract till 2027.
Jesus.
But he's only played 400 minutes this season, and Liverpool went out in the summer and they bought 3 midfielders.
Yeah.
3 midfielders. And Curtis Jones has now barely played. And it does sort of feel with an academy player, and I kind of like to imagine this with Klopp as well, that if somebody went to him and said, I've got a chance to move to another club, are you really going to stand in my way and like not let me do it? Maybe in January he would, with them in a title race. But seriously speaking, like I just think it's not really reasonable to never play him, to buy a bunch of guys to sit in front of him and to not sell him. I think at some point you're going to have to move him on. And yeah, he's 23 in January. He now has over 70 league appearances. He's obviously played in the Champions League. He's homegrown. This is useful stuff. And he is a fantastic passer. And what we've seen Arteta do time and time again with all his recruitment is prioritize passing security over basically everything. Like, that is the sense in which he is a real Pep kind of apprentice. He likes guys who are just like not risky on the ball. And Curtis Jones is a really good progressive passer. Like, passes forward a lot, passes into the final third a lot, passes into the box a lot, while maintaining really good pass accuracy. That's something I like. He's also a surprisingly good dribbler. I was looking through his numbers and I was like, this is a guy who completes nearly 2 dribbles a game at like a 70% clip. Like, that doesn't feel like what I see when I watch him, but I guess he rarely loses the ball. And that's really what I want. So I think that if you buy him, what you're getting is a homegrown guy who's at an age where it's totally possible that he really progresses and becomes great. And if he doesn't progress and he's just this player forever, you've still got a perfectly useful player who is a different sort of option. Because as much as I like Havertz, and he really does look like he's clicking recently, Havertz is a certain kind of player who I don't think you can use in every big game. And if Arsenal are getting to the latter stage of the Champions League and you're up against, you know, a really impressive attacking side, playing a midfield of Rice, Odegaard, Havertz, I don't think quite works. If you want to swap out one of those guys for Jorginho or Partey, I think that's way more defensive. So I think Curtis Jones gives you a little bit more defensive solidity without being super, super conservative in the way that Jorginho, Rice, when Arsenal have used that this season. I just think it's like really, really like kind of scaredy cat like lineup. I don't like it.
Do you not think money-wise, though, it's going to be that the same as a Bakayoko? Liverpool.
Yeah, but I don't particularly want Bakayoko. Like, this is the money that Arsenal were getting quoted for, like, Rafinha a couple of years ago. And Rafinha was, like, kind of the perfect Saka like-for-like guy. I mean, I think it's a position of need, and I think you're going to free up a load of wages. Like, when Jorginho and Partey go, you're going to be freeing up, what, 400k a week in wages? That's a lot, man. And your midfield suddenly becomes, like, Rice, El Neni. Like, you need players in there.
He's that 16-year-old kid that you've got him
in one area. Yeah, we got in one area. Like, we got loads of interesting boys, like young players, but like, who knows?
Okay.
Who knows?
Well, Ciaran, decision's up to you, my friends.
I feel like I inherently don't trust anyone from the Dutch league.
Yeah, I feel that way.
I feel like it makes sense if he does go to Dortmund and you just let him deal with it. And if he's good, you're like, okay, I'll get him.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a higher hit rate if you buy him from Dortmund than or a German club than if you go straight to the Netherlands. I feel like you probably get Curtis Jones for less money. I feel like you could probably get him for 40 at some point.
Yeah. I don't think that's crazy.
Because if you're paying 40 million for someone who's not playing and you don't really play.
Who's the last big person they sold as well? How's their FFP looking? I mean, they're in the Champions League.
And I feel like
they sold Mane.
I feel like
money, didn't they?
They're looking at it and be like, oh, he might do it at Arsenal. He's not going to like win them. Like, it's not like, you know, you're not selling like an integral player where you're like, okay, you can have him, but for
And they have
loads of
done business
money.
before. I mean, I'm trying to think. Probably the most recent one was at Oxlade-Chamberlain a long time ago, but when he went to
they owe a
to
favour.
Liverpool,
Yeah, that's how it
Yeah.
works. Yeah, we call it back in now.
they notch it down. Okay,
I'll have to go. And also my boy Umir on Twitter was just calling for Curtis Jones. He was like he would fit perfectly at City, and that man loves watching stats and stuff. So
Probably, yeah, he'd be
I
great for
back
City
it.
as well. Yeah.
I've got a fun one with City in a bit that we'll get to. Okay, let's move on then to my beloved club, Pochettino's Barmy Army. How much will they spend in January?
balmy? I don't
We're a little bit balmy.
Oh, they're quite balmy.
Yeah, you say that again. Okay, I reckon I know I've gone for.
Yeah, you reckon you've gone for?
I've gone for Ivan Toney. Really simply put, Ivan Toney. Now, this could be, I think it's Chelsea. The issue of Chelsea is we're actually in a bit of money trouble at the moment. FFP,
Yeah.
weirdly enough,
That's
when you
weird,
spend when you spend $1 billion
How did that happen?
in such a short period of time, it does catch up with you. It does catch up with you.
At some point, you need to pay off the house.
And I think he is not the chairman, but the technical director of Brentford came out and over a couple of weeks ago and said, "Look, we are willing to sell Tony. We're willing to sell Tony, but it's going to cost you," which makes me feel like this could be a 60, 70, 75 million pound transfer to get his services.
Zach, this is so.
And I don't
so
know if
much
Chelsea
money.
can spend. I really don't know if Chelsea can spend that money. I like people talking about Osimhen. He's 120. I think his buyout clause now about 120.
Has he
million
signed
from
the new
Napoli.
contract?
So I think he signed the new contract
With the release, so that he can
which
get
has
out.
a release. Obviously, the release is reported by journalists, whether you believe them or not, which is about 120 million pounds.
Why go to Chelsea as well?
Arsenal are supposedly interested in both those strikers as well, Tony and Osimhen.
Okay.
I am a Jackson fan. I still do like him. I know a lot of people have kind of changed their opinions throughout the last 6 months. But this was a guy that even last year had barely played football, had played like half a season and looked really exciting. And he is still, I feel like you've seen him have a big kind of confidence knock over the last kind of 4 months since playing for Chelsea. But he does, raw numbers wise, look like a very, very exciting prospect because that's what he is too. But Chelsea do need a bit of experience in front of that goal. And whilst they might have someone like Romelu Lukaku, who they're not willing to bring back, Ivan Toney really does kind of is the only person there. You mentioned earlier about buying from the Premier League. And I just think Toney's that guy. I really do.
Yeah.
If we're going away from the financial issues that Chelsea have and they are somehow able to afford it because they found another loophole, whatever it might be, I just think Toney's got to be the guy. So Lukaku signed a new deal in the summer when he went on loan to Roma, which was wasn't extra years, but it did change. It made him have a buyout clause of something like 40 million. Which I think, and he's been doing okay at Roma, which I think is something that they might take up as well.
You also do have assets you can sell.
Yes,
Like you always have assets.
Yeah.
Chelsea always have guys they could sell.
well, if someone like Toney comes in, like Broya is someone that who I rate is someone that, especially there's all this talk at the moment about pure profit at Chelsea.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't shock me if he goes. Ian Matson is someone who nearly went in the summer and on the last day, and in the end stayed to try and fight for his
Burnley.
place. He was on loan at Burnley, before.
You'll also have the Hall money that comes in.
Yeah,
because he's on loan with option or obligation.
He is obligation to buy.
So that money will come in, and that'll be like 30 mil.
But he's not been that great, and I've seen Newcastle. It's an obligation, but I think there is certain if it does this, or I think it might even be an option.
I think they do it.
And I saw Newcastle fans being like, maybe we shouldn't do it because he's barely played, and he's third
18.
He's third. I know. I think he's very, very talented, but he's third in the pecking order to Dan Burn.
Dan
and
Burn's
people
pretty good,
weren't. I think Newcastle fans not too keen. Yeah, and also the way Newcastle want to play their football. But Dan Burn probably isn't that guy.
And Trippier's been quite bad. They probably need to give Trippier a rest.
Well, they're playing Tino Livramento at left wing.
Exactly. So they need probably to put Livramento on the right. But the thing is, they don't really know how to build up if they don't have Trippier. They need Trippier and Bruno to do it.
Well, he gives away a goal.
Trippier needs to be put on a farm and just left to live out the rest of his days away from a football.
He's had a good career. He's had a very good career. Obviously, he won the Liga. He's done not too.
Went on the High Performance podcast.
Went on the High Performance podcast.
Yeah.
The peak of anyone's career.
I've
really.
never listened to a second of the High Performance
I'm
podcast.
not
I
a big fan.
actually, just to make a run even more mentally excruciating, I listened to the entire Phil Neville High Performance podcast episode.
What would he know about high performance?
It was, I can't, it was fascinatingly bad, but I quite enjoyed it.
Didn't he? I remember there was
Like a hate listen.
There was a bit
like
about,
a hate watch.
I saw a thing. Phil
I do
Neville,
hate Jake Humphrey.
I saw a thing Phil Neville say where he was like, I perfected one skill only, the step over. Every time, it's the only skill I used, and it worked every single time. And I was like, I don't really remember
Perfected it. It's
Phil
quite
Neville
strong.
doing
Yeah, I
doing
feel like-
step
yeah,
overs.
it's
Where he was
Like-
just like,
it's not
put me
like
up against
and everyone was-
Maldini,
yeah.
step over,
Yeah.
see you later.
I don't really remember that.
Phil
But
Neville.
You got the McGeady spin and the Phil Neville step over.
But yeah, no. Anyway, back to Chelsea. Tony's my guy. I just think he'd fit in. Like he'd work. There aren't many transfers. Like Chelsea haven't made a lot of smart transfers that have worked out so far. People will say Cole Palmer really is the one this season that's done it. But it kind of almost feels, for me anyway, and people said that about Lukaku, but Tony, it would work. It just would.
How old is he? Is he 27, 28?
Yeah, 27, I think.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay, so that's not
It's
bad.
not terrible.
Yeah,
It's
you get
someone.
3 to 4 years.
Yeah, it's someone who's
He's not really a
also
pace
last,
guy, is he? He's
and
fine.
also, like, Jackson can play off the left. He does do that. There is Nkunku that's come back, which I think there's a lot of players that play off the left, to be quite honest, for Chelsea. But I just think Chelsea for the last 4 years now haven't been able to score goals, and Tony would definitely help with that.
Okay.
Who's yours?
No one. I think Chelsea should sign no one.
Oh
January.
wow!
Chelsea have got 0 stakes this season. There's nothing to play for. Nothing at all. Not a thing. Not a real thing. Chelsea have got nothing to play for this season. They spent an insane amount of money, and they've got a bunch of players who are learning how to play under a new manager, while also learning to adapt to a new league, while also learning about their teammates who they're playing alongside. That is so much to adapt to. And yeah, I think that there have been some performances from this Chelsea side that have been really encouraging. I thought they were pretty good for a half against Arsenal. They were pretty good for most of the game against Liverpool. Their attack was great against Man City. Their defense was shocking. But like, they've put on some real shows. Like, there have been some games from Chelsea where I've thought, yeah, I see where this is going. And inconsistencies to be expected because they're a young team with a new manager. And to be honest, the league, I think, is just tougher than it used to be. So, like, you're more prone to bad results. But I do think there's enough in Jackson to persist for now. Broyo we haven't really seen. Maybe he's good. I don't know if he's at that level. But we haven't even seen this attack with Nkunku in it. And I do think that this attack with Nkunku, with Sterling, with Jackson, there's enough there to have a good enough attack for now. And I don't think Tony is good enough or young enough. Like, I really like Ivan Toney. I see how he would work with those players, but he's not like 23. It's not something, he's not like the perfect player and you're just obliged to go out and get him. I do think that this Chelsea side can afford to wait and build. And I think trying to supercharge the process, trying to zoom to the end of it is a mistake. I think they should deal with what they've got right now. Like, you don't even know if you're ever going to get anything out of Mudryk right now. Noni Madueke has disappeared.
Yep.
There are guys all over. Romeo Lavia has never been heard from.
Injured.
Like, he's just like a missing man. These are all things in the squad and Chelsea have barely had Reece James fit, and who knows if he'll ever be fit again. But he is a key player for them. Like, there are all these guys where Chelsea do not know what they look like once everyone knows Poch's system and everyone's fully fit. They have no idea. So how can they possibly know enough to go and spend 70 mil on Tony? And if you were to get Tony and he were to have the best half season ever and score 15 goals in the league, Chelsea are not finishing in the Champions League places. It's not happening. You're too far back, and there are too many good teams. I think Arsenal, City, Liverpool, and Newcastle are all very clearly better than Chelsea. And then after that, I think Spurs and Villa are better and have advantages on Chelsea points-wise. So I just think going and spending this money is once again like, and we'll come on to this when we talk about Man United, a disgraceful institution, but like it's just kind of like, oh, maybe if we sign the right guy it'll fix all our problems. And I think that is a really stupid mindset. If you wanted that, then you shouldn't have gone and bought a bunch of like 21, 22-year-olds and built for the future. Did you expect to like compete for the league this year? No. So don't panic buy. Wait, and who knows, maybe in the summer Arsenal are like, well, there's talk about us wanting a striker, but we don't really. Or maybe we want Evan Ferguson, or I don't know, something. Like, United have hitched their wagon to Højlund. City have got a striker. Real Madrid have got Endrick coming, and they'll be after Mbappe. PSG, who knows what they'll do. Like, but there are a bunch of Bayern have obviously got in Kane. So you're kind of like, maybe in the summer, nobody goes for Osimhen, and you can actually get it.
Yeah.
Like, that would be way better. But who knows? Nkunku might come into this. Nkunku is the player who I probably have like the highest opinion of in that attack, other than Sterling, obviously. Like, he's the guy who I think he might just be a superstar and make it all tick. So why go and buy someone to semi-replace him before you've even seen him play in a Chelsea shirt? I just think it's silly.
Wow. There you have it, Keir. On the video that is about signing one player, Pat has said sign no one.
Yeah, better.
I've gone Ivan Toney.
If anything, I've overperformed.
Oh, I don't.
There's a podcast about that.
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah. The Overperformance podcast with Zach.
I get the not signing anyone,
but you love to sign.
And it's also, keep in mind, it's also probably too smart for
Todd.
the football.
Yeah,
it's like
it's like
for modern
signing,
football. Is
Do you remember when Spurs did it and everyone was like,
but they did it 2 windows in a row, and also like everyone was kind of like,
and after Poch was like, I need signings. My players are getting old. Sissoko played in the Champions League final.
yeah. Sometimes you just need to say to your fans, like, you're wrong. Like, honestly, you're wrong. Like, we know better than you. And like, Arsenal should have said that like 3 years ago, and they'd have actually wasted less money in their rebuild if they'd done it. But instead, they were like, oh yeah, let's get some of these old guys. They'll tide us over, and they would dog shit, and we wasted a bunch of money on them.
Because very, very rarely do you have like a problem, and then to go to the fans and be like, okay, I know we're struggling a bit, but we have all the ingredients for it to be absolutely fine. I know you think you just buy someone and then that you hinge all your bets on getting better because of that one thing. But I think I'm going to err on the side of buying Ivan Toney.
Yeah, fair enough.
I feel like
he would make you better.
Even just, I think you would make them better, but even just out of sheer spite, because I don't think you'll get, I can't pronounce his name.
Osimhen.
Osimhen.
Yeah, Osimhen. Yeah.
Okay, I always go Osimhen. In the summer, because I think he's just way too much money for you right now. And what do you reckon you get Toney for? 70?
I think Toney's going to cost
60, 70.
so much.
70?
Less embarrassing than Solanke
It won't be 100.
They'll try. Man.
Yeah, you can't
like,
stop,
this will
stop buying
drag
people for 100.
Guys, we've got
one
another
is
6 teams to do. We need to move this along.
No one ever is worth 100. I'll stick with Toney.
All right,
I
Ivan
buy
Toney.
I don't think Jackson's that guy.
That is interesting. Well, we won't go into that.
There's a quote.
We won't go into that. Okay, let's move to your club then, Ciaran. Just before we touch on the player, then really quickly, City. We mentioned them earlier as well. Not quite where they have been over the last few years. Why do you think that is?
I just, that meme where you're just suffering from success. it's no one's ever won 4 in a row.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think we've lost. I think the biggest miss ever is Gundogan. Easily. Just being. We don't. Before it was obsessed with Porza, as I like to say. And just keeping the ball, and we just don't keep the ball that well. We sort of allow the game to get more end to end and attack rather than just keeping
you guys
it being
get caught
patient.
up in the game a lot? Like when I went to the Chelsea City game, like it when I normally watch City, I felt like they do such a good job at like not getting caught up on like in the kind of hype of the game and getting crowds excited and like having these kind of constant breaks. And again, in the 4-4, I just remember thinking, this is so not like City. There are a few more errors.
And we give away just unbelievably like high quality chances. We just literally, it's almost, at this point, it's almost a bit like when we had Bravo on goal and every single shot went in.
Forget about
Literally,
Claudio
it's so
Claudio
frustrating.
Bravo.
Defensively, we're just awful at the moment. I just can't get my head around it. But until I see us not win 15 games in a row at the end, it's always like the death of City until like January, February, and then it's like, oh, this was inevitable.
Yeah.
So until that doesn't happen, I just got to sit here and believe it will.
Okay. All right. Well, look, you mentioned kind of the person that I've gone in for there. Gundogan, I think, completely right. He's the biggest miss. And so I've gone for a guy called João Neves at Benfica. Benfica seem to create these midfielders every other year. They sell one for 100 million and the next one comes in through the production line.
Yes, that name is just made up. That is, João Neves. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I've heard about him about 3 or 4 different times. He played for Wolves. Yeah.
But there are like there are 6 Portuguese names.
Yeah. Neves, Mateus, and then a few others as well that I can't think of on the spot. 19 years old. Now, obviously, you guys have a very good relationship with Benfica. Edison, Ruben Diaz,
a lot.
have all come through
Cancelo.
through their ranks. Yeah, Cancelo. Now, he took over from Enzo when he left in January and has done a fantastic job.
It's not going to cost 100 million, is it?
He probably will. Like he is probably going to cost a lot of money. I think they know. I think with Chelsea though, they knew they could get a lot more money. I think with you guys, you can play a little bit more hardball.
We just refuse a lot of times.
Yeah, and I think you got, and as I said, you kind of got that relationship with them to over the past few years when you've bought from them. But most importantly, he's just great at everything. Like decent defensive numbers, really good at keeping that ball, keeping it ticking over, making sure that kind of when there are plays that need to be happening, he's there to control it and kind of great at taking on a man when needed. Maybe not so good at putting the ball in the back of the net, which Gundogan kind of found towards the end of his career at City, but he's 19. And I think just like he's someone that Pep can just mould into whatever he needs him to be. I don't think he'll ever be, say, like a Rodri replacement or something like that. That's something you don't need to really think about for a while. But, yeah, he's just like, he's a Gundogan 2.0. He really is. I think he's fantastic.
That's interesting, though, because Gundogan didn't arrive as the player he left as. Like, Gundogan originally, in his career, he was like a kind of like deep midfielder who had pretty good defensive work rate and was a decent passer and a ball progressor. It was only later on that Gundogan became this incredible kind of match controller around the edge of the penalty area, an amazing off-ball mover into the box. So I don't know if you can just find that young guy. I think it does require some experience probably. And also, I kind of look at the midfield and I think City spent a load of money on Kovacic and Nunes in the summer. Like, you should be able to make it work with them. Like, now, Nunes, I thought he was crap when Wolves signed him, and Wolves fans said, Pep said he's the best player in the world. And then I thought he was crap when City signed him. People were like, Pep said he's the best player in the world. And now, now he's turned up. I think Pep might be like, oh, God, like, he's not very good.
Well, he did when that got brought up to me. I was like, oh, I was just being like, he's not.
It's one of those things I say.
Yeah.
But then again, you know, like, it wouldn't be the first time that a player kind of looks crap at City for like 18 months and then suddenly he looks a world beater. But they've got these midfielders in, and I think that you should be able to make it work with them. Like, no offence, but I don't feel sorry for Manchester City when they're like, oh, God, we've got to make it work with Mateo Kovacic, who was a starting player for a Chelsea side that won the Champions League and was at Real Madrid for years. I actually think one of my issues with them is how they play without Rodri. It's not just the absence of Rodri, but when they play without Rodri, they've been doing this really, really narrow setup. Essentially, like, much more of a kind of narrow 4-2-3-1, something like that. And Pep has kind of said, I don't know if that worked, and it definitely did not work. I'd say that they've put in more bad performances in the last month and a half than I've seen from Pep sides in the last 10 years. Like, we actually did a breakdown on this on my podcast before Christmas, and like, I was just like, I've seen terrible performances in a way that even when City would get bad results, I never saw performances like this. Like the Villa performance. Even the Palace one. Even the Palace one. The Chelsea one, like the lack of control in that game is just like alien. Like you were saying, they get kind of sucked into it. That's so un-City. But I think one of my issues with the squad construction is the move towards a particular kind of wide player, which is, okay, we've now got Haaland. Haaland gets all the shots. He gets all the goals. And so wide players now need to be ball movers and creators who participate defensively. Like Doku, like is a really exciting player. Doku's like a ball mover though. Like he's not a goal scorer. He's going to score some goals. He's playing for Manchester City and he's talented. But they used to have wide players who were primarily inside forwards. So Sterling was more of a goal scorer than a creator. Jesus could play wide and was more of a goal scorer than creator. Mahrez always put up over 3 shots a game. And there were times in the season where Mahrez would just win a few games single-handedly because he was that good. Now, obviously, you know, the absence of De Bruyne is a big issue for this as well. Those like amazing shots from the edge of the box, teams just don't have to defend that area in the same way. But I do think a wide player who gets shots is just a good weapon for them to have. Like they've got Alvarez, but he doesn't really get to play that role. Foden doesn't really do it in the way that we thought. You know, he's actually quite low shots wise, Foden. So I don't necessarily think this is like the perfect signing, but I do think is this perfect shape of signing. So I was looking at Donyell Malen, who
wants to leave.
He's 24, 25, and he is now looking like very, very good. Like the player that we thought he might turn into. Across his whole career, he's like a 4 shots per 90 player. And he's now at 0.7 expected goals and assists per 90. So this is like elite stuff. Loads of touches in the penalty area. About 3 dribbles a game, which is crazy too. And I think if he doesn't work out, you're going to be able to sell him for a reasonable return. It'll be like a sort of Ferran Torres situation. But I think, you know, it's a January signing. You can't get the perfect candidate in January. But I really do think that, yes, City in the long term might want a guy who's more like Gundogan and less of a 6, you know, in that midfield zone. They should also be able to play someone like Bernardo Silva there, in my opinion. And they wanted Paquetá, which I like too. But I do think that just having one more player of this kind, like a different profile of wide guy in the squad who essentially gets goals from wide and takes some of the burden off Haaland is a good thing because their shots have gone down. Their passes into the penalty area have gone down. The distance that their shots are taken from goal has gone up. Like they're taking fewer of their shots from wide areas. Like everything about City suggests they are becoming narrower and more, you know, they're not predictable. They're still an amazing side, but they are... I just think it's good for them to have different options, especially because I think Haaland is going to have injury problems. It is just going to be the case. They need to think about that.
Okay, well, Manchester City fan Ciaran Carlin.
I'm going to have to go with Patrick.
Oh,
Oosh.
I think we're fine. I'm absolutely fine with Kovacic and Nunes. And I'm just waiting for them to be fine. And then De Bruyne, it's just sort of like, just wait for him to come back.
With his new hairstyle.
Yeah, I like playing Phil Foden in the middle anyway. And then... I really miss Mahrez. So if I could buy him, that'd be great.
That would be great.
Like the perfect people to rebuy would be Gundogan and Mahrez. Just bring them back.
It'd be interesting because half the reason he's not happy at Dortmund is because he's playing off the right and he wants to play either through the middle or the left.
He could be miserable in blue.
The
Then.
Doku can play on the right as well. Like
I don't think it matters. I don't think that stuff matters. I think that's a situation
when you
where
are playing now
ultimately
for
playing,
City compared to Dortmund. Like,
exactly, and you're playing for Pep. Pep's like, do you want to be a great player?
Do you
or
want to
not?
win 3 Champions Leagues?
That's why Jack Grealish is fine doing whatever he's told to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Very true. Very, very true. Okay, then. Well, let's go from the blue side to the red side. Manchester United. Because this I found very hard because they just need a lot of signings.
They just need players who are good.
You could look at centre back. You could look at midfield. I've ended up going for the right wing, which I think for the past 4 years we've actually been talking about.
Bloody hell, Zach! They've literally spent 160 million pounds.
I do agree, but I was also looking at I say realistic. Like the guy's probably it won't be going there. Sancho's looks like he will be leaving, not even in the squad anyway. Anthony is really bad.
Transferring to the same team as Thomas Partey, I think,
But he's really bad. And like, when you look at the midfield that they've got at United, I was thinking that obviously...
He's so bad as well.
In the midfield, Casemiro's back. They've got Mainu, who looks really exciting. Fernandes.
This team is made up.
Mount is in there as well.
The fact that they're like Mainu and McTominay. That's how we're going to run it.
But like they can't go and buy another midfielder. Like Amrabat they got in.
But we're going to do it anyway. Like that's what it is every year with them.
But and so I felt like, look, right wing, is the one I'm going to go for. Rafinha from Barcelona.
Yeah.
Is the one I've
He'd be
I've
great
picked.
for City as well. He's quite Mahrez like.
And like, to be fair, more recently he got back into that Barcelona team, but supposedly they were willing to sell him to Saudi Arabia in the summer.
They're meant to
Like,
have a fire sale, apparently.
yeah, and like they're always in financial ruin, to be quite honest, and need the funds. And United, if they might have the new owner by that point, like they are also financially a bit screwed at the moment as well. But yeah, I think Rafinha is the guy he's fantastic on the ball, creatively, goal scoring wise, does more than just cut in and shoot on this left foot, which is just what Anthony's doing really.
Doesn't even spin anymore.
Yeah,
Do a spin.
Yeah.
I saw it once.
Could maybe do a little bit more like defensively and stuff, but I just think if you're looking on that right wing, he's the guy to go for. He's a little bit older, 27, but
He's quality though. He's really good.
There are a lot of issues for United, and they're going to need more than just one signing. But Rafinha was the one for me. What about you, Pat?
I was like, I'm still on the midfield. Like, there's no athleticism in this United team. None. Like, when Rashford's fit, he was like their one quick player. And Højlund came in, everyone was like, he looks great. And the reason he looked great is because he was running around. Like, he looked strong and he looked fast. And we're so used to them not having that. And I think in Anthony and Sancho, they signed one guy who is talented and one guy who isn't. But they signed both of those guys have almost zero physical attributes that are useful. And I do think that if you get people who have like some raw athleticism, you've got something.
Yeah.
You know, like seriously. I look at their midfield and they were having Casemiro earlier in the season single-handedly anchor the midfield, but also try and break into the 6-yard box as like a third man. You know, so he scored against Bayern. He scored a couple of goals doing that. You can't do that at 32. Like, you don't have the legs to do it, and you can't really do it in the Premier League. That's Eredivisie. like.
When Tadic was just so ridiculous.
Go back to Amsterdam. Like, you could, like, that doesn't work here.
Yeah.
Like, that's honestly how I feel. Like, it's like childish football, and I do. But to go back to what I was saying about Chelsea, United need to get out of the silver bullet mindset. This will be the one player. We drop 60 mil on this guy and he will solve all our issues. That is silly. What you do is you gradually buy good pieces and you develop a style of play and you fill your squad out. And then when it looks like you can do something big, that's when you make the big signing. That's when you go and get Van Dijk, Alisson. That's when you go and get Declan Rice. Yeah. Like those are the times you make those signings. If you make them early on, then you have this piece that sort of sits there for a few years waiting for other stuff to arrive while being criticised for not single-handedly fixing it, Paul Pogba style. And by the time you've maybe amassed some of those other pieces, if you do actually have a plan to do it, which United never do, that guy is a bit older and has maybe developed into being what he needed to be previously. He's no longer the guy you bought. And I just think that what United should do is buy a bunch of good squad players who just make them better. They need a solid midfield. I think everything comes from the midfield. And so I think they should just go back for someone like Amadou Haidara from RB Leipzig. He's 25. He's super athletic. He has great defensive work rate, like great ball winning capabilities, really good progressive passer, rarely loses the ball. And more importantly, you've just got someone who can cover ground in midfield while not being an idiot like Scott McTominay. Like, Scott McTominay is like, he really puts the effort in. He's actually got great goal scoring instincts, but he's not good enough at that to make up for the other stuff he's not good at. And I just think people talk about Ferguson's United. Well, Ferguson used to get so much value out of guys who, honestly, at the time, I was like, this guy's crap.
Do you know how scared I was of Darren Gibson?
Yeah.
And Overton. I was
Fletcher,
like,
Gibson,
no,
Fabio.
not another one.
Like Raphael, you were like, oh, Jesus.
I was terrified of anyone they brought on.
And we would literally sit there and be like, all these United, look at that United bench. It's crap as they won the league again. That's what it was like supporting another team during that period. And I think go and get some of those guys because they're not going to let you down. They're not going to have the pressure on if you only spend 30 mil on them. And if you don't like hype them up to be God's gift. If you just go and get a few useful players and build towards a kind of solid passing, hard running, athletic team, in a few years' time, you'll suddenly be like, oh, we look like a football team again. Instead of, looking like a credit card, like being waved around by children. Like, it's just like, it doesn't make sense. And look, don't get me wrong, I pray for United to stay this stupid forever, but if they actually want to be a serious team again, then they need to start doing serious things and not like running their club for 11-year-olds.
we'll see. Well, we'll see what happens in January because they don't have a lot of money to spend either.
Good. Long may it continue.
Keir?
I'm going to have to go with Patrick.
Yep.
I just think it's an absolute... There's just no overarching theme that goes through the entire club, and it's just endless amounts of 70 to 90 million players who will be the guy to solve it. And it almost feels like fan appeasement buying like Rafinha or someone just to be like, he's going to score some pretty goals.
It definitely do better than Anthony. That's
But he will. But I just feel like
I do better than Anthony.
But it's just the culture. They buy anyone, and they just end up being a dead. Like it literally just. I'm like, this is funny. This keeps happening. I'm like, would Fred have been like a nice guy and yeah. I think he maybe not actually, but
okay.
I just remembered the track record.
Okay, Merseyside fans, do not worry. We're talking about Liverpool next.
Second best team in Liverpool right now.
Second best team, second best manager in Liverpool as well, arguably. Sean Dyche. Liverpool. I think they've got a lot of the pieces of the puzzle already. To be quite honest, I think they've spent so much in the attack. They've brought in a lot of midfielders. But they still don't have that number 6. Obviously, Klopp has kind of tried to play a few other midfielders in that role. We've seen McAllister play there and do a half-decent job, to be quite honest. But you want him to be playing further forward. He's now injured. They brought in Endo after trying really, really hard to go and get Caicedo. If Endo's just not of quality, he's not. He's a stopgap. He is, and I think everyone kind of realises it. Scored a lovely goal over a couple of weeks ago as well, about a month or so. But I've gone for Paulinho from Fulham, who was obviously looking for the step up in the summer. He had a failed move to Bayern Munich go through. That
he literally cannot kick a ball straight.
Yeah, but I think with the rest,
he can kick it off your foot.
With the rest of that midfield, he just needs to win that ball back. That's the job there of the player. Like they are so susceptible to getting. Like I really don't rate their defence at the moment. I know they've got a very good record, and Van Dijk has actually looked fantastic too.
It is so funny that at the time of recording they've conceded as many goals as Arsenal. It's so funny. They've conceded fewer goals than City. That is so funny.
But underlying numbers actually, when you use the eye test and watch them, they do concede chances, and they're there to be got at. And even against United, like United had a very different system where they were obviously kind of just sitting back and absorbing it. But United had chances as well.
Yeah.
United had chances to score. And I just think if you get someone there whose job is just destroy, pass the ball back to Van Dijk, pass the ball to Trent, whatever it is. Like you're not asking him to do 60-yard passes, whatever it might be. There's so many other players that can do that. Just get Paulinho. The issue slightly for Paulinho is signed a big fat contract to stay at Fulham. And might cost quite a lot. You'd like to think, however, look from the reports of journalists,
Matt Berry voice.
It doesn't look like there is a supposed clause, but maybe they don't know every single thing.
He's also 28, isn't he?
He's he is 28. Yeah, he is getting on a little bit.
Tremendous.
But they just need a DM. They need a DM, in my opinion.
Okay, I think we're in agreement that they need a third defender. As in, the way they used to do it is their fullbacks would go forward, and then like Fabinho would kind of be there with the centre backs. You're defending with 3. I think another way to do that is to get a versatile defender who can play left back or centre back, basically. Because I think that Trent can step into midfield and do midfield stuff. But it's weird that what they've never considered is if Trent's going to do that. Well, I guess they did consider it. What we need is a more defensive-minded fullback on the other side who essentially is a centre-back. That's something that City do. It's something Arsenal do. It's something that...
They've tried. They have tried.
But they haven't tried that hard. And they haven't bought a fullback for some time. So I just thought... somebody who'd be useful for me. I thought about Kimpembe, but I just think he's a bozo.
He's a liability, man.
Yeah, but his contract's up next summer, and I was like, he's a decent passer, but like,
maybe.
But I think a sort of more sensible version of that might be Mario Hermoso out of Atletico Madrid. He's also 28, but he's out of contract next summer. He's played left back. He's played centre back. He's a really good progressive passer. He's a good defender. He's better defender as a centre back than as a left back, but I think that's fine because I think he'd be playing as left of a back 3 basically as Trent goes forward. I think you could probably get about 3 good years out of him. I don't think the wages would be high. I don't think the transfer fee would be high. And I think that what Klopp has shown this season is that it doesn't have to be like, oh, okay, we've got a problem in the defensive midfield zone. We need a defensive midfielder to fix it. You need to fix it by having players playing certain roles in certain positions. But that player doesn't have to be a DM. It doesn't have to be a centre-back. It can be a centre-back stepping into centre-mid. It can be a left-back stepping into centre-mid. It can be the whole defence shifting over. I think that if you were to get Mario Moso, like, he's a left-footed centre-back, like, that's fairly useful. Worst case, he's just like a backup and it's totally fine. And I think they could do with that. Best case, he's really good, and your midfield is now Trent getting forward, but without the same vulnerability as before. Either way, you're defending with one more, and that means that rather than you putting Palhinha in there to defend in that middle zone, in my system, you'd be putting Van Dijk in there to defend in the middle zone, and Van Dijk has been incredible this season.
Very good this season. He has. They are still like, it's who's the left back that's playing there now? Tsimikas. Like they still do create like chances with him going forward.
But he is a go forward fullback. He's a conventional fullback, and I think having a conventional fullback when the guy on the other side is Trent Alexander-Arnold that's a problem when you don't have a DM. You need an incredible DM.
There is also a way though to have, and Paul, like in terms of winning the ball back, like Palhinha is that. Like you can have this. Palhinha can kind of drop in as well, and your left centre back can move out into the left back position too.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's just different ways of approaching the same problem. But I do think with Palhinha, he's not a good passer.
Your guy is cheaper.
He's not a good passer, and I just think. I don't know. Like he puts up a lot of defensive actions in a team that has none of the ball. What's he going to look like in a team that does have a lot of the ball and where he's expected to be? Everyone's always like, he can just get it and give it to another player. Well, almost no good team. I can't think of a good team that plays with a guy who just does that, who just wins it and gives it to a better player on the ball. No one does that.
Not for a long time.
Because there's a ceiling on it.
Well, I mean,
and Liverpool are competing for the title.
But it stops them from conceding as many chances as they do. Like
does it?
He can give them.
Maybe.
He's also not like he can't not pass at all.
He cannot pass at all. He cannot pass. He's okay. He cannot pass at all. If he had no feet and he had to use his leg like a snooker cue, he'd be better. He's not good.
I really think he'd be able to fit in with them. I do. I mean, there are other guys as well. There are younger guys too that you can go out there for. But to be honest, whilst talking about it, he's going to cost a lot.
He's going to cost a lot.
And they've got the money to spend, because obviously they didn't spend it on Caicedo. But will they spend it on Palhinha, Ciaran Carn?
No, they won't. I think he's fine for Fulham. And then it feels almost like a Roy Hodgson's Liverpool transfer.
Charlie Adam.
I just feel like if you're buying someone for defensive solidity, Atletico Madrid is probably quite a good place to
this season they've been the opposite. They've been flying forward. But yeah, I get what you mean.
They've got good defensive PR, so
that's
true. I'll back them.
Yeah.
Go get Koke out of that system. What's Raul?
Wow, I didn't know where that sentence was going.
Isn't Raul? He's the one that was at Chelsea for a season on loan.
Felipe Luis?
No,
you
Saul. Isn't he doing like ridiculous
really good
defensive numbers?
He's been good again.
He's been unreal. Maybe bring him to Liverpool.
But La Liga is like a joke league.
Yeah, Girona top of the league. Okay, let's move on.
It's become a disgrace.
Our next one, Newcastle. I thought a little bit about the right wing.
This is horrible.
I've always been like, Almiron can be improved upon. Didn't decide to go for that. Because you know who isn't very good? Dubravka. And Pope is obviously not there now until the next season. He might not even make the Euros. And if Newcastle want to go where they're not, I was going to say obviously far in Europe, but they're not even in Europe now. Like they're not even in the Europa League. But if they want to at least get into top four, goalkeeper Nick Pope was very important for them last season. Defensively, they are strong, but they do still concede chances. And Dubravka's just not that guy. You know, someone who could be that guy, and could be signed right now before the transfer window even opened. David De Gea.
Oh my God!
Do they play? Are they playing with the ball at Nick Pope's feet?
De Gea and Pope?
Are they playing with the ball with Nick Pope's feet?
No,
they're not.
Really.
What was David De Gea actually very good for? I know he had a few mistakes. Yes,
my good God.
But Nick Pope's had a few mistakes. Nick Pope ran out of goal and headbutted someone.
It just doesn't
and got
feel
sent
right.
off. David De Gea the issue with David De Gea is his
I like
wages.
it for the culture, though.
David De Gea's wages are huge. Like they're going. That's half the reason I reckon he's not even signed for a club yet, because no one's willing to pay him 250 grand a week. And he's like, well, I was getting that at United and some.
And who takes a pay cut?
However, I think if Newcastle came knocking at his door, he'd join.
One last hurrah.
Definitely.
I think
That'd be an amazing move.
I think Dubravka could really cost them if they keep at it with him in goal. Shot stopping, I was going to say that obviously he had the most clean sheets last season, but that doesn't necessarily mean too much. But
it's about confidence from
it is.
behind you as well.
It is, and and also like the rest of the team isn't necessarily a mess when everyone's fit. Whereas at United, like, he had a shoddy defence, he had a shoddy midfield, and barely an attack last season. Well, Rashford was very good last season. At least at Newcastle, like, he's got a very good defence in front of him. He's got a midfield that works super hard there as well, that works with the Eddie Howe system. Like, I think it would be a very good stopgap whilst you're waiting for Nick Pope to come back, and someone that would also challenge for Nick Pope's number 1 shirt. Like, Dubravka was never going to be that guy.
I like it. I do think. I
It
think
does
it'd be
feel weird. It feels weird.
One of my issues with it is like, how does it change the dressing room? Because I worry that it unbalances it, because there's not really anyone in there who like is of that stature.
Yeah.
Like Trippier is probably closest.
Yeah.
Unless I'm just forgetting someone. I guess Callum Wilson's been a senior player for Howe for a long time. But like, I worry that De Gea comes in, everyone knows he's earning a ton of money, and he kind of like acts like he's too good for it. And I think that Newcastle run so hard that they need every week to be like, guys, we're going again. Like we're all pulling together. I don't know. It's just like one of those things where like you'd have to, like, Hal would have to meet him and say, is this guy going to upset my dressing room, which currently seems incredibly harmonious and like a great place to be. But like you say, great stopgap. I just went for a wide forward because I look at them and I'm still like, oh, Almiron's still playing.
Exactly.
Okay. Gordon's been great this season, but like Almiron had like a minute where he looked really good, but he isn't really good. I think it's quite hard because you do need someone who works super, super hard. So the one guy I was looking at was Silas from Stuttgart. Silas, who used to be Silas Wamangituka, he sat out a year because he was injured, and also sat out a little bit of time because they found out that he was playing under a false identity.
Oh, no.
Which was not great, and that he was also a year older than he said, I'm like, basically my agent has been holding this information over me. And so he went to the club and said, like, I want to come clean, like,
that does
but
happen.
I've been scared to do it. And they were like, okay, and he got banned for 3 months.
That's all right.
Yeah, it's like totally fine.
Yeah, holiday.
But anyway, like this, I also think that's stuff that like Saudi owners just lap up. Saudi owners would be like, this guy doesn't listen to the man. He does what he wants. Like, but also he's looking really good. Like a couple of years ago, when they got promoted, when he was like 20, he got like 15 goal involvements in the Bundesliga. It was really impressive. And he's now kind of back to 0.6 expected goals per 90. He's looking kind of fit again. He's also played as a wing back. And I think that at least if he ends up being a really good wide forward for you, great. But if he doesn't, then it means you can flex system. And maybe instead he takes some minutes from, the Richie Murphy kind of pool that they've had over the last couple of years, which would also not be the worst thing. He's a really high volume dribbler. He's a good passer, huge defensive output as a forward. I just think that he'd be like a good squad player. I still think they need a few of those. As we've seen, this injury crisis has absolutely destroyed them. They've had a horrible injury crisis, and they do just need a few guys who can come in and are just like competent quality players. And Stuttgart are flying this season, flying. And he's just perfectly in that mold. I think he's perfectly in will run his legs into the ground, but also might have a little bit of star quality there too.
Yeah, I mean, all I'm saying, Keir, one, they need a lot more desperately than the other.
It's true.
I think this makes so much sense. But sometimes I don't like sense. And I want to see, on a 6-month deal, just fork out his awful wages.
Football.
Just for 6 months, I want to see De Gea at Newcastle.
Yeah.
Very quickly, with all their injuries, it's like, this sort of feels like a foundation of it's the relegation team again. Like very quickly, oh Jesus Christ, what's going on? Man, Richie's starting.
Yeah.
It's just very, but Almiron is obviously dog water, bless him. But he's a smiley man. So I'll give him that at least. It doesn't look like it.
He's definitely better than
his own football doesn't upset him.
He's definitely better than he was. Like there was a time when he first joined where it was like, you are really
And Newcastle was still really good while he's playing.
Become a solid player. You know? Yeah. What I do worry about the David Hay deal is like they could have just done it by now.
Yeah,
if they were going to have done it, they would have done it.
I don't think
they'll just try and
buy a keeper.
When's Nick Pope back? When's his arm welded back on?
He's not. He's out for the season. Like they've got right now. It's Dubravka in goal for the rest of the season.
That's not great.
Yeah, it's rough. You're just not gonna. I don't know who you. But who else is in goal? I don't know.
God knows.
I do. But yeah, get De Gea. It'll be funny.
Yeah, it'll be funny.
Okay, we're going to fly through the next few as Pat's got to run. Spurs, look, we could spend a while here, but realistically, they need a centre-back.
Yeah.
We've seen them linked to Jean-Claire Todibo, who's been very good at Nice. Obviously, he had experience at Barcelona, barely played, but obviously learned some football there at least for a few years. And I think it'd be a really solid signing. Like, it's kind of hard to... And this actually looks like one that could happen unless Ratcliffe is the owner of United in time. But... yeah, when Ben Davies, who's done an okay job, to be fair, playing centre-back, is still doing it, and Van der Ven doesn't look like he's back for a little while as well. They just need a centre-back. So I've gone with Todibo. I also looked at Mark Gehi or Joachim Andersen as well at Palace as someone. Okay. But they're going to cost you a lot more than someone like Todibo will. And especially with maybe kind of Roy Hodgson's job at the moment. Who knows? It could be a new manager that doesn't want to sell these kind of key players for them. So it was Todibo for me. Have you gone for him?
They're also supposedly interested in Tosin, at Fulham, and he's 26. His contract's running down. Makes a lot of sense. Pretty low risk. A guy I looked at is, I thought a kind of centre-back, full-back type would be good. Someone who can play both positions. So there's a guy called Bafode Diakite at Lille. 22, good passer, big tackle numbers, big tackle success, like 80% tackle success. Big aerial win numbers. He's from that pipeline at Lille, of left centre-backs where you've had like Botman and Gabriel in the last few years. They just generally produce cultured, defensively solid centre-backs. I think that he's somebody who could grow with them, potentially be really good. And if he's not really good, he'll be a good enough backup. Again, that's what they need. Like, they've got depth in like central midfield and stuff, but they've gone big in attack, so they've got to see that out. But like, left back, centre back, that would be a good area to shore up.
Yeah. You are Daniel Levy.
Who's cheaper?
I think Tosin, Fulham, obviously they're Premier League. That's probably cost a little bit more than
Tosin's the cheapest.
You think Tosin will be cheaper than Todibo?
I'm
just thinking because Todibo, they're
contract
probably about the same.
Contract running down,
Probably about the same.
Yeah,
probably about the same. Yeah, I guess contract's running down. Yeah, we'll go with Tosin being cheaper.
I'll go to Debo.
Nice.
Okay, then finally.
For 1 month at Schalke.
All right, then. Finally, we move to Aston Villa. Now, for a while, I felt like this position at Villa could have been improved. Matty Cash is not a good enough right back to be where Villa are so far this season.
Wow.
He is fine defensively. He's okay going forward. But even Unai Emery has stopped trusting him and is now having to play Concert right back, who is good defensively, but again, going forward, it's not really his game. And also, like, he's a fantastic centre-back, Concert too. It's not like playing like Ben White out at right back, who can actually get forward going or go forward really well. And so I've mentioned him a few times as well when talking about right backs. Benjamin Henrichs, over in the Bundesliga. Now, he's contracted to RB Leipzig until 2025 as well, so someone that you could pick up possibly in January, who they could look to move on. He can also play left back as well, can play in midfield too, so he's kind of versatile. Really solid at both sides of the game. Good defensively, good going forward. He's someone that, like, for a few years now, he's been kind of mentioned. Arsenal were kind of rumoured to be looking at him as well at points, but didn't pull the plug for him in the end. He's not super old. Like, you'll be able to have him at the club for a good 4 or 5 years or so. And someone who's just kind of progressed at a decent rate over these last few years. Might not cost you. It won't cost you an arm and a leg. I don't think it'll be cheap either. I think RB Leipzig brought him in for about 20 million euros. He could cost around 35 million quid or so to get him, maybe in January 40. But I just think, like, Matty Cash is just not a Champions League fullback, and that's where they're looking to try and fight at the moment in the top 4, top 5 possibly.
Mm-hmm.
So Benjamin Henriks is who I have gone for.
I like Matty Cash, and I think that, you know, Dean is the guy who gets to go forward, so I'm okay with Cash not really doing it. But I did look at right back, but really I think they need some more attacking depth. You know, I was looking at their attack and I was like, Watkins has either created or he's responsible for over a third of their total XG as a team. And I just think that they were interested in Ferran Torres in the summer. I think they should go back for that. He started under half Barcelona's games. He's played under half their league minutes. He clearly has never really been valued there. But since he went to City, he's been at or over 0.5 expected goals per 90. He gets loads of shots, about 3 a game, loads of touches in the box. He's an above average passer. So I think he's a guy who can spot you through the middle in a pinch, but who can get you goals from wide the rest of the time. And I think that, you know, Bailey's okay. They've got Buendia to come back. Like they do have kind of options around there. But again, you know, kind of like Newcastle, it doesn't take much before you say, this is thin. And I just look at them, and if Watkins got injured, we'd all be like, oh, Villa. Like, what's going to happen now?
Yeah.
And I think if you had Torres, you could at least play like a front two of like Diaby and Torres, or do something interesting. And I think that a front three of Torres, Diaby, and Watkins is like pretty exciting stuff. And he's still young, man. So I don't know. He's clearly a guy that they're interested in. I think he's available, and he's potentially a star. Like, there were moments at City where he looked really good, and when he first arrived at Barca as well. So he'd be a real get for Villa.
Okay.
I'm going to go Ferran Torres.
That's City Link.
Yeah. I've got him on the back of his shirt.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so unfortunate
It was a
for you.
gift from Will, and it was when he was popping. And then, and then it very just quickly became like, oh, and he's gone. But yeah, he was fantastic when we had to play him like through the middle. And then he was just really good all around, really sensible buy from Valencia, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was.
Yeah, I think throw him in the Villa side. I think that'd be fantastic.
Okay.
That'd be so much fun.
Well, there we have it, boys. Thank you so much for joining me on the very first episode of... We don't know what we're calling this just yet. This has obviously gone out on a Monday. Next week, it should hopefully be weekly. It'll go out actually on a Friday, and Friday from there onwards. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Pat, thank you for joining me. Ciaran has a football channel as well. So if you want to check that out.
It's Ciaran Carlin FC.
And then Pat also has a podcast as well that's on your Twitter.
You can find it on my Twitter, on my Instagram. Unseen Incidents with Patrick and Pete.
Perfect. If you have not already subscribed to this channel, click the subscribe button. Let us know what you guys think of this in the comments below. Like the video, and we'll see you guys very, very soon. See you later. Bye.